How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 62. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate you joining me on another episode where I'm going to be covering a new movie that I got to check out in theaters. We're going to be covering the overall thoughts, my pros and cons, and giving you that one question that I know you're thinking about. You're thinking about it every time you watch a movie, and that's, is this movie timeless? On this week's episode, we're actually going to be watching the newest entry of the Ghostbusters franchise. That is right, we are going to be talking about Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Now, very similar to last episode on the podcast, I actually have not seen the entire franchise and movies of Ghostbusters. So again, very similar to Kung Fu Panda. I had to watch all the movies just to get prepared, and I did the same thing here. I watched the first one that came out in the 80s, Ghostbusters, ended up watching the sequel, Ghostbusters 2, and then I checked out Ghostbusters Afterlife in 2021, and now I am ready to go to actually cover and I just really wanted that detail. I wanted the context. Obviously I've heard of the Ghostbusters. I know who they are. I know things that they would do in the specific, films. I've seen clips and pieces of it, but never seen the entire movies all the way through. And so it was a really fun adventure, at least for me, over the past week, just to kind of catch these movies, especially seeing them from like the 1980s. And then you kind of transfer over to now the 2020s, where you just have a modern take of the Ghostbusters. Got me really excited, got me really pumped to watch this new one, Ghostbusters A Frozen Empire. In this film, you have most of the returning cast of Ghostbusters Afterlife, and it's also directed by Gil Kinnan as well. So let's go ahead and dive into my overall thoughts. I'll sprinkle in some of my pros, some of my cons. I'll also kind of throw in what was my favorite scene or who was my favorite performance in the movie. And guys, feel free at any time, go ahead and post down in the comments below of this video, what was your favorite character? What was your favorite scene of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire? Let's compare and contrast to see what our moments were and if we enjoyed this film as well. Now, I went to go see it on opening night in Dolby Cinema, and I left the theater with, feeling good. It was a good movie. I enjoyed my time watching it. I enjoyed seeing these returning characters from Ghostbusters Afterlife. Left it in a very good mood. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about my ratings in regards to where it ranks with all the other Ghostbusters. But again, I left the theater, having a good time. It was a good, enjoyable story as well. Now, just to give everybody a good kind of little summary and synopsis of what happened in Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, it basically picks up right where Ghostbusters Afterlife left. You have the four main Ghostbusters. You have Phoebe, you have Trevor, you have Callie, and Gary. All these four characters now are back in New York, and they are the true Ghostbusters as of this moment. They actually take over the firehouse of where the OG Ghostbusters used to live as well. And so they're just there trying to protect New York from all the dangers and the paranormal activity that could occur. As they go through the story, though, you get to see a lot of different types of conflicts and tension. You have a moment where Phoebe basically is told that she is a minor. She is not allowed to be a Ghostbuster. And you see her kind of go through that in the entire story of, well, what is her purpose if she's not a Ghostbuster, right? She's the first character to kind of create the idea of like, we should probably be Ghostbusters to honor our grandfather, right? And so you see her kind of struggle through that. Then you also see these different types of situations where the team has to face off against the villain called Garaka. And what Garaka is basically almost like a demonic being that is trapped in a ball. And this ball is basically what's kept it in a jail for many, many years. And then finally, it escapes. And then you see the terror that Garaka can cause. What Garaka does is basically using everybody's fears, it's able to freeze everything around it. And basically you see a shot, which is awesome shot in the film, and it's a frozen like blizzard and ice covering New York City. And it's just such a great shot. But again, it just shows you again what the power of Garaka is as well. You also have a lot of different types of conflicts in regards to, well, what happens at the firehouse if there's no space for the ghost to be contained? How do we manage that as Ghostbusters? And so you get to see a lot of those types of moments. But what ends up happening is you have the Ghostbusters team. They end up recruiting the OGs as well, and they all work together to fight off Garaka and save New York City. Again, glossing over a lot of the different details. I don't want to spoil it too much, but that's in essence what the story is in regards to Frozen Empire. Now, let's go ahead and dive into my first pro in regards to this movie. First pro's got to be the visuals. I just mentioned it right now of a beautiful shot where you see kind of New York City just covered in ice, and it's supposed to be the middle of July, so summertime. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful shot. The team that created the film did a great job with the visual effects. Again, everything looks so realistic, but the best and the thing that stands out to me the most is the villain, Goraka. It just looks so sinister. Like you could see the face and it looks kind of mummified with these bright blue eyes and these scary horns that ends up kind of being attached to its head. It's just really good stuff of what they were able to do. Every time Goraka kind of just glides and walks around, and the things that it was able to do to kind of freeze the environment around it. Just really cool stuff that they were able to pull off from a visual perspective as well. Second pro that I have is actually the character of Gary Gruberson, who is played by Paul Rudd. He was really a funny character in Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I was happy to see his character return. He is now a full-time Ghostbuster, and he still has some of the funniest scenes in the movie. But I actually like what he was kind of facing as a character. At the beginning, he's now, again, a part of this Ghostbusters team. But more importantly, he's going out with Callie, who is the mother of Trevor and Phoebe. And he's trying his best to have a relationship with Phoebe and Trevor, but he's trying to play both sides. He's trying to not only try to maybe fit in as almost like a stepdad figure, but also still trying to be their friend and still trying to be somebody that can kind of hang out with them and be able to talk to them at any moment in time. And you could see that struggle. He's trying his hardest that maybe he has to put his foot down in certain positions. Maybe he has to be a little bit more assertive. And sometimes it doesn't come out because he's such a nice guy in the film. But I really enjoyed his aspects and his details of what he was able to do with his character. So really good stuff on that side of it. And then my third and final pro is actually the new technology that the Ghostbusters team was able to leverage. One of the coolest parts they highlighted in the film is, what were some of the OG Ghostbusters doing at this time, right? How are they getting involved? One of those specific individuals that ended up helping out a lot is actually Winston Zeddemore, one of the original Ghostbusters, played by Ernie Hudson. He's actually the philanthropist in this film, and he's actually the one that's actually funding the Ghostbusters squad. He has teams of engineers. He has folks working to try to figure out new technology to help out the Ghostbusters in how to capture them, how to find new ghosts, and what to do after the ghosts are captured. And one of the coolest things, again, is that they were able to highlight new things. Like instead of having a normal ghost trap on a remote control car, they now have eventually built a specific type of drone that can catch ghosts that end up flying into the sky. So I really enjoyed the technology that they were able to kind of show off as well. Just either, again, new ways to actually utilize the proton pack as well, new ways to capture ghosts and contain them overall. So really cool stuff. Again, I really appreciated those types of aspects that they highlighted in the film. And it just shows you how the world and the universe of Ghostbusters is expanding and it's trying to keep up with the times. All right, let's go ahead and move on to my cons. I only have one, but to me, it's sort of a big one. The biggest one is that there was just a lot going on from like a plot or concept perspective for the movie. So that, as the narrative goes on, like I mentioned, you have a situation where Phoebe is faced with a situation of, hey, you're a minor, you're not allowed to actually work for the Ghostbusters. And so she had to face that conflict throughout the film. But I feel like they didn't hit on it too much where they kind of kept that story going, because then they would jump to, well, then there's a conflict between Phoebe and Gary. Gary, again, trying to be the stepdad, but Phoebe and Trevor don't seem to kind of accept that much. And they hint at that a little bit. They might get into an argument, but it isn't kind of flushed out the way that I was hoping it would be. Then you have the OG cast in regards to some of the conflict that they face in regards to, again, what their characters, used to be able to do and what they do now, right? Biggest example that I can get is like Ray Stantz, played by Dan Aykroyd. Again, he still works at the shop. Again, he still wants to be a Ghostbuster. He still wants to be in the action. And Winston has to tell him, hey, you can't be a Ghostbuster forever, right? You're going to have to move on. And I really enjoyed when they showed that piece, but it was only one scene. And they didn't kind of flush it out. And they didn't show, well, what else can Ray do? How else can Ray help out in these situations? So again, there was a lot of different concepts and a lot of cool ideas that were kind of thrown out there from the film, but they all kind of just really didn't connect that much. Again, another big one was Phoebe actually ends up making a connection with the ghost. She's in the park one day, she's trying to play, chess, and then she ends up noticing a ghost join her to play. And that ghost is called Melody, played by Emily Alyn Lind. And they throw out the concept of, well, what if you didn't have to capture the ghost, right? What if you didn't have to actually get rid of them? What if they're not all that bad? What if you actually just let them be? And I thought they were kind of hinting at that because, again, Melody and Phoebe ended up having a great relationship together. But again, it just never panned out. They still end up catching ghosts because obviously not all ghosts are going to be good. But again, it's just that aspect of how many different concepts and narrative types of plots they were trying to go with that I just felt like it wasn't a concise, kind of clear story. It just kind of felt like it was all over the place. Now, again, not every narrative is going to be like a very seamless and it makes sense all the way through. I understand that. Again, in my personal opinion, I just felt like there was a lot of different ideas going on. I kind of wish maybe it was slimmed down a little bit more. Maybe let's focus on the relationship between Phoebe and Melody. And maybe let's focus on Phoebe. What does she do if she's not a Ghostbuster, right? She's being rejected by her mom, by Gary, by Trevor because she's not old enough. And she's being rejected by the world. How is she going to react to that? How is she going to be able to handle that going forward? So just stuff like that. Again, I know that that's not what the movie was trying to maybe show us, or maybe it is and it just went over my head. That could totally be the reason. But that was just my one nitpick. Again, there was a lot of different ideas and concepts, really good and really interesting, but I just didn't see them flushed out all the way through just because of how much was going on. So overall, again, those are my pros and cons and thoughts about Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Again, I still enjoyed the movie experience. My recommendation on if you would want to come and watch this film, again, I would say that if you're already watched all the previous Ghostbusters, definitely come check it out in theaters. If you're a fan of visual effects, this is another good one to kind of check out as well. But I would actually recommend, feel free to wait for this on streaming. Again, it didn't really blow me away. I didn't leave the theater like, oh my gosh, like I need to watch this again. I unfortunately didn't leave with that kind of a feeling, but still, again, a great and enjoyable story. The characters are always kind of fun and enjoyable to watch. But again, for me, my personal opinion on this watching experience, definitely you can feel free to wait on streaming to check this one out as well. All right, I think this is a great opportunity to talk a little bit about my favorite performance as well as my favorite scenes of the movie. Favorite performance, I teased it a little bit already, but it is actually Paul Rudd who plays Gary Gruberson. Again, he has such great delivery and lines in the movie. And his character just actually has something kind of going on. And they, at least for him, I feel like they really flush it out. At the beginning, again, he wants to be a part of this family. But obviously, it's not his place to decide if he can be the stepdad to Phoebe and Trevor, right? It's not up to him. It's up to Callie. And so what does he try to do again? He tries to play both sides. He tries to be friends with Phoebe, be friends with Trevor, try to have a good time. But how can you have a good time when, again, if you're going to be the stepdad, you got to put your foot down. You got to be aggressive. You can't just say yes to everything that they want to do. Sometimes you have to restrict them in certain areas to protect them. And so again, you get to see that kind of back and forth. You see an argument between him and Phoebe as well. You see how, again, Callie ends up having his back, but does Gary have Callie's back when they're starting to have arguments with the kids? So again, a lot of good stuff that Paul Rudd is able to use to work with for the character. And he actually has one of my favorite moments of the movie where, again, he in this kind of situation where he has to be that stepdad figure or be a friend, he has an argument with Phoebe where, again, Phoebe ends up getting arrested for what she was trying to do in regards to help out specific civilians in the public library. And what ends up happening is you see Gary kind of come into the room, play nice with Phoebe, and then all of a sudden Phoebe kind of snaps back at her mom, and that's where you just see the dad mode come in for Gary. And then Gary comes in and is like, you don't talk to your mom like that. You don't do that. Like, again, you got to respect your mom at all costs. And again, you just see the flip. You see the dad mode switch on, and you see that performance of Paul Rudd, again, just trying to be real and not be a friend anymore. Now I have to be your dad. Now I have to put my foot down and be assertive and let you know, hey, you crossed the line. You can't do that. And then what's even better is that afterwards, you could see the feeling of almost not regret, but you kind of see the pain as a father, and where Gary now feels bad that he kind of had to yell or had to raise his voice to Phoebe. And then he ends up kind of letting his entire emotion out as he stands outside of Phoebe's room. What he doesn't realize is that Phoebe's actually not in her room, so he's not able to hear anything that he says. But he basically just pours his heart out and says, hey, Phoebe, you're a really cool kid. You're going to figure it out. Don't worry like that. You have a family that's here to support you. Yes, there might be times where things might get very tense and there might be a lot of conflict, but your family will always be here for you. And it was really good stuff. Again, too bad Phoebe couldn't hear it because she wasn't there at that moment, but really good stuff by Paul Rudd. Again, enjoyed those specific scenes that he came out in. All right, everybody. Now we have gotten to the last segment in which we are going to decide whether Ghostbusters: A Frozen Empire is a timeless movie. As of today, I can say that Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire is not a timeless movie, unfortunately. I really enjoyed some of the prior Ghostbusters entries. To me, if I were to rank them, it'd be very tough for which one was my favorite because I actually really enjoyed Ghostbusters Afterlife. I was really surprised. I did not anticipate that one being so emotional, and the way that the story kind of all played out. It was just such a great one. But I think I would have to put that one as maybe number one, with a very close second, the original Ghostbusters. And then I think I would have to put maybe Frozen Empire as number three. And then last but not least, it would be Ghostbusters 2. So again, that's kind of my personal ranking. Again, some details as to why it's not timeless for me. Again, for me, the narrative of the entire film just kind of feels like there's a lot of things going on, right? There's a lot of great concepts that are thrown out there, but I don't feel like all of them are either delivered or they're not elaborated on, or they don't really are allowed to breathe in regards to the film. Again, there's some things that are, right? Like Gary's kind of entire arc of going from friend to then being a stepdad. Then you have kind of Phoebe having to face the conflicts of, well, you're a minor, you can't be a Ghostbuster, so what do you do with your life? Those are, again, at least kind of fleshed out a little bit more, but I felt like the story could have been a lot better if it would just kind of focus on a couple of those ideas rather than throwing out so many different options as well. Again, the visuals are beautiful. I really enjoyed the different types of effects that they were able to do, especially with the ice around New York City. But again, there was not anything else that kind of popped out of my mind of like, yeah, I can't wait to rewatch this, or I can't wait to do that. One of the other things I actually forgot to call out in my cons is I actually didn't think the film was as funny as the other Ghostbuster entries. I was really looking forward to seeing Podcast again. He actually, again, some of his lines just didn't hit for me. Compared to some of the other entries in the Ghostbusters universe, this one actually didn't make me laugh as much. Again, these are kind of set up as comedies in a way, but again, it wasn't as funny. It didn't have as many moments that made me laugh. Again, did I not laugh the entire movie? Of course not. There was great moments that Paul Rudd was able to say. There's a lot of things that, again, Bill Murray was able to say, but overall, not as funny as some of the other Ghostbusters movies that I've had a chance to watch over the past week. Again, that is my opinion in regards to Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. More importantly, I want to hear what you guys think. Have you guys had a chance to check out Ghostbusters Frozen Empire? And if you have, let me know down below in the comments. What did you think about the movie? Is this, again, maybe one of your top Ghostbusters films? Is there something that you kind of pointed out that you would want to let me know that maybe I forgot to mention? Feel free to, again, post those down below in the comments. That way we can interact. Thanks so much, guys, for listening. If you stayed all the way through, my name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 62 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out next episode when we cover a new film and decide whether it is timeless. All right, guys, have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you later.